Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending today. It is my pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker, Eric Slifka. Eric Slifka is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Global Partners LP and a member of Global's Board of Directors, in addition to successfully guiding Global's initial public offering and listing on the New York Stock Exchange in 2005. He has overseen the significant growth of the business through strategic acquisitions and organic projects. Under Eric's leadership, Global has expanded from its New England roots as a regional wholesaler of refined petroleum products to a Fortune 200 company with 2013 sales of more than $19 billion, operating income in excess of $85 million, and a diverse base of energy customers across the United States. Eric has been in the energy industry since 1987. He is a member of the National Petroleum Council and serves on the boards of the New England Fuel Institute, the Energy Policy Research Foundation Incorporated, Massachusetts Youth Committed to Winning, and the Massachusetts General Hospital President's Council. I'd like to introduce Eric.
So Roberta, thank you very much for that kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, let me begin by thanking President Chris Herb and the entire association for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. The truth is, as Chris said, I had to pay to get me to speak, so thank you for listening. You know, before I get into my prepared remarks, you know, we started out as a family home heating oil company in the retail business. My grandfather started in the business. We had one truck. My dad went into, that was in the 30s. My dad went into the business in the 50s and got on a truck and started driving. My grandmother was doing the books. So, you know, we had a real small company at the time. We grew because we kept looking for opportunities. And the thing that really is amazing about this industry is it continues to evolve, it continues to change. With that change comes opportunity, right? And so it's incumbent on all of us to figure out where those opportunities exist and then drive to be successful in those seams of business that 5 or 10 years ago you could have never imagined being in. You know, for us, we were never heavily in the crude oil business, but today we're one of the largest movers of logistics, providing logistics for producers and refiners around the country. We move a couple 100,000 barrels a day. But that was because we saw the market evolving and the market changing, and we took that opportunity to go and do something different. Now, of course, those risks were measured before we did it, but in the scheme, had we not been open to doing things differently, we could never have grown to the place that we are today. So with that, let me get going on these prepared remarks. Thank you. Chris, I know that you've invested a tremendous time and energy since joining CEMA in 2001 to make this organization the most effective voice possible for your membership. And I want to acknowledge your passionate leadership and skillful communication. Not only has your political background benefited CEMA, but so too has your earlier career as an executive with the American Red Cross. I mention the Red Cross only because I'm sure more than a little blood has been spilled at the Capitol building in Hartford over the last 13 years. You've had to fight tirelessly on behalf of the state's heating oil and propane dealers, gasoline distributors, and energy consumers. Since being appointed CEMA's president in March of 2013, you have cast a bright light on the state government's misguided efforts to create energy policy in Connecticut. This policy, instead of being inclusive of all energy sources, picks winners and losers. It is this short-sightedness that creates risk for government and consumers alike. A policy of diversification of sources is a balanced approach to an ever-changing energy landscape. Without question, the politics-first approach demonstrated by Connecticut Governor Malloy's comprehensive energy strategy is an example of the way in which our industry is often perceived as dirty and easily expendable. A pair of brown shoes in a world of tuxedos. So it was heartening earlier this year to read this headline over Forbes column by contributor William Petland. Winter 2014, How Fuel Oil Saved the Day in New England. Mr. Pentland's article discusses a technical conference put on in April by the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The purpose of the conference was to examine the effects of 2014's historical cold weather on the regional transmissions organizations and independent system operators, which operate and manage the nation's electric grid. This grid can consume heating oil, diesel, residual fuel, gas, and other fuels to generate electricity. Now, few of us will forget the winter of 2014. January ushered in the historic polar vortex shown here in a NASA satellite image, as several harsh and cold weather events strained the natural gas and electric power markets, creating unprecedented market volatility. Spot natural gas prices throughout the Northeast surged to new records as the severe weather and already existing pipeline constraints created bottlenecks that further snarled gas delivery. Drawing your attention to the far right of this chart, spot prices at the Algonquin City Gate in Boston hit $34 per million BTUs. This is equivalent to about $4.70 a gallon. On top of that, you add LDC charges, and that's roughly about $5 a gallon. And this is early January. And then it crested to 73 per million BTU, $73 per million BTU. That's over $10 a gallon. So you're talking almost $11 a gallon. Now, I think the key here, right, is if anybody had thought that this was a possibility 5 years ago or 3 years ago, they would have said, no, we're finding natural gas everywhere. It's going to be the cheapest fuel to use and to consume. You know, natural gas is American made, oil isn't. Think about the rhetoric, right? And think about how that plays now in today's world. There's lots of natural gas, but there's also lots of oil in the U.S. So it's a very different world that we exist in just from a few years ago, and that makes it very difficult for policymakers also to keep up with the changes because they don't necessarily see it happen as quickly. So when you talk about the prices, just for comparisons, this was about 12 times the average spot price at the majority of other hubs during the same period of time. The winter cold spell spared few parts of the U.S., but as the FERC Commission pointed out in its post-winter analysis, New England did not experience as many weather-related energy problems as other areas of the country. Why? Our diversification was the key reason. As fuel oil was available as an alternative source to primarily natural gas, while natural gas was in short supply due to weather and a lack of pipeline capacity, distillate fuel again proved its value for both commercial and residential customers. The majority of the region's oil infrastructure operated at full capacity for much of the season, while natural gas-fired plants produced far less than their capacity. And that's according to ISO New England, which oversees the day-to-day operations of the region's power grid. Last winter, according to ISO, natural gas prices exceeded oil prices on 57% of the winter days, and during cold periods, the oil units accounted for almost 1/4 of the region's electricity. This compares with an average of just 1% at other times. Through its winter reliability program, ISO New England procured some 3 million barrels of oil, and the vast majority of it, 88%, was burned. As Pentland pointed out in his Forbes column, if anything, oil seems likely to become more, not less, critical for maintaining reliability in the near future. Unfortunately, in Connecticut and across New England, that message seems to be falling on deaf ears as state governors and their representatives engage in private discussions with the natural gas industry to push for homeowners to convert their heating systems en masse. Putting aside for the moment the ethical responsibilities of our elected leaders, For policymakers, government officials, and consumers, the message from the winter of 2014 should be clear. Diversification of all energy sources is the most effective policy for our elected officials to pursue. A policy in which the value of one energy source is placed over another puts the entire system at risk. The answer is not to place all the region's chips on a single energy bed. Only by maintaining strong, stable, and diverse supply of products, heating oil, diesel, propane, electricity, natural gas, and biofuels, can we be assured that prices will remain competitive, businesses will be able to compete on a level playing field, and consumers will receive the most cost-effective energy possible. While Governor Malloy and other state leaders talk of wanting clean, cheaper, and more reliable fuel, the irony is heating oil already meets those specifications just like gas or other products. It is made here by American workers and American refiners with U.S. American-found crude. The end result is a product that is as clean, if not cleaner, than natural gas. It's really important for us as an industry to educate not only the consumers to these facts, but also the state and local towns and governments and elected officials, because they're working in an older vision of where oil and energy came from and how it made its way to the US, right? They're not looking at it today and thinking, oh, this is domestic. It's found here in the US, it's found in Canada, and it's actually